Thank you for bearing with us. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome all of you here and those of you who are live streaming across the United States and around the world to Ronnie's celebration of life. Ronnie's influence on all of our lives has been immeasurable. She had a positive impact on so many people, directly and indirectly, that we decided instead of mourning her passing, we would celebrate her legacy, and that's why we're all here today and broadcasting in prime time in Europe. Our speakers today all have different perspectives on what Ronnie meant to them. However, there's some commonality in their messages. Ronnie's love, her compassion, and her innate ability to connect people. A little bit of housekeeping first. Please shut off your cell phones. And the restrooms, if anybody needs them, are behind me and to the right. Okay, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Melissa Fogarty is an administrator in the Somerset school system in Massachusetts. She's a 5-time host mom, and her life has been completely changed as a result of her hosting experiences, which she will go into detail with right now. Melissa?
Yes. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Barry.
Hold on one second. You gotta ask the people to mute.
You guys have to mute.
Move your system, move your.
I don't know.
Thank you, Barry. And again, Electra, thank you for having me speak first. That's quite an undertaking, but I feel very privileged to have this time to really share with all of you here how Ronnie influenced my life and my husband's life in ways that we could never have imagined. And I did write it down just because it's a lot for me to remember. So I will read something we put together. My life and my husband's life changed in ways we never thought about 10 years ago. While I was working as a vice principal at Durfee High School, I met the Ronnie Newman. I remember the day as if it was yesterday. Ronnie was with an exchange student from Slovakia named Patrick, and she was registering him for school. And so the story began. I was fascinated that a 17-year-old student could leave their family and life as they knew it to live with a family they had never met and walk into a school where they didn't know anyone and only had a basic level of understanding of the language and culture. I just needed to find out more about this program. Needless to say, we, my husband and I, were captivated by the idea of becoming host parents and sharing in this amazing cultural exchange and experience and opening our hearts and our home. Throughout these past 10 years, Ronnie became instrumental in not only our lives, but with our 4 Italian children and their families, along with our immediate families. Over the years, Ronnie had shared in many family gatherings, celebrated birthdays and holidays with us, and offered valuable advice on any given day. Our relationship grew from that of a local coordinator and host family to Ronnie, my godmother.
Yes, I can.
I would often say to Ronnie and others, my mother gave me the gift of life, and Ronnie gave me the gift of what it was like to be a mom. I have so many saved messages and pictures we shared over the years. As a matter of fact, Barry would often say to us, you two do know that you can call and speak to each other instead of texting. But Barry, I'm so glad we didn't listen to you, because now I have all these meaningful messages and pictures that I can look back on. The passion that Ronnie has for Paris is a passion similar to our passion for Italy. Ronnie would often share her travel experiences with us and wanted for us to visit Paris with her. Although that didn't happen, Mike and I made a promise to her when she had taken ill this past year. We promised her that we would go and visit all the places that she told us about so many times. And this fall, we will go to Paris. I truly believe that people enter our lives and stay for as long as we need them. During that time, lessons are learned and experiences are shared. And it's up to us to take what we have learned and continue the journey. And that is what I intend to do. Ciao for now, my friend. I know you're watching from above and smiling. I put together a little short clip of some very fun and memorable moments that I'd like to share.
Hope when the crowd screams out, they're screaming your name. Hope if everybody runs, you choose to stay. I hope that you fall in love that hurts so bad. The only way you can know, give it all you have. And I hope that you don't suffer, but take the pain. I hope when the moment comes, you say, second that this world can give. So many places, the things that I did. In every broken bone, I swear I lived. I hope that you spend your days, but they all add up. Oh, when the sun goes down, raise your cup. I'll say, I did it all. I did it all. All every second that this world could give. So many places, the things that I did. In every broken bone, I swear I lived. I swear I live. Every broken bone, I swear I did it all. I did it all. All every second that this world could give. So many places, the things that I did. With every broken bone, I swear I
All right, I think it's me now. See me running around. They put the young kid in charge of the technology, and I'm just pressing buttons. All right, I have a little speech prepared here. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is Electra Newman, and I am, as my grandmother Ronnie would say, the only child of an only child of an only child. 3 generations of fiercely independent people, her, my late father Andrew, and I were like peas in a pod. As matriarch of the family, she was always our biggest cheerleader and advocate, encouraging us to pursue our creative passions while attending theater productions, concerts, sporting games, dinner receptions, driving us to art classes, New York City, and across the country whenever my dad's van broke down on tour more than once. She was the type of person who would go to endless lengths for you literally and figuratively without question and often without you even having to ask. She always told me to fight for what you believed in no matter what, the true epitome of a Jewish grandmother. One of my favorite stories about my grandmother that paints a perfect picture of who she was and what she did for you or other people was that when I was 8 years old, when you first start becoming sentient and you figure out what your favorite food is, and what your interests are, and your favorite music, I was driving with my dad one day listening to the radio, as we always did, and then my new favorite band came on. And remains my favorite band to this day. I don't know if any of you know the White Stripes. They've since disbanded. But I was driving with him, and then after the song played, the DJ announced they were playing a concert in Providence that evening. And it was so excited, and my dad said, "Oh, we're going to that show. Use the royal we." And I was like, "No way, that's great." He was like, "No, your mom and I are going." I was like, "What do you mean?" Little 8-year-old me. I was like, "What? I don't get it." So that night when I was dropped off at my grandparents' house in Barrington, my dad, felt really bad at this point because I made him feel bad. And he was like, "Okay, well, talking to my grandmother, if you want to meet my friend Joe or Greg or Steve or Bill or some other generic man's name who's my friend who works there, maybe he could get you in," just saying in passing and whatever. So all night, we're watching Scooby-Doo, eating my grandmother's famous American chop suey. I finally convinced her. I was like, "Okay, can you take me to the show?" So without question, she drove 30 minutes to this venue and then worked her magic. She went up to the door without any fear and said, "Do you know Joe or Greg or Steve who works here, some other generic man's name?" And they were like, "What are you talking about? Seeing, an 8-year-old and presumably her grandmother approaching the stage door." And he was like, let me go check. So he comes back, and Joe, Steve, Bill, he's not in right now, but I'm going to give you guys a guest pass. So without question, they just allowed me and my grandmother in, and all night I sat crisscross applesauce about 3 feet away from Meg White's drum kit. To this day, it's an amazing story that I tell all of my friends in disbelief because, again, this band doesn't exist anymore. And without her perseverance and diligence, I wouldn't have been there. Granted, my hearing has probably greatly suffered from that experience, but, we left before the second encore and we made it home before midnight. And I was able to wave to my parents in the audience with their shocked faces. But that was the type of person she was. And I think she had a good time, but I think what made her most happy was seeing my face, seeing my first favorite band for the first time. And, she was a teacher in the truest sense of the word. She never stopped doing or being who she was. She remains a global influence to those nearly 4 decades worth of exchange students she's worked with, and passing down a deep wanderlust that I am forever grateful for. She brought me on my first international trip when I was 10 to England and France, and then to Germany, Switzerland, Greece, the Czech Republic, Italy, and Vatican City, if you count that as a separate country, which I do. She would talk to anyone, anytime, anywhere, about anything, and made everyone she interacted with feel like they were the only person in the room. Her retention for details, names, and places always amazed me. Her love of sunflowers, James Taylor, basset hounds, the pond in her backyard, and of course traveling, made me appreciate every moment with a new clarity and light that will never diminish. I will miss her every day, and my father, but glad to know they are wandering through the cosmos together. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa and Electra. I'd like to now introduce Jeanette Burt-Ness, a retired world traveler, who'll now talk about her experiences as an exchange student mother. Jeanette.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you for Electra for letting me say a few words today. My name is Jeanette Burt-Ness. I was a friend of Ronnie Newman's. I met Ronnie through her work as an exchange student program coordinator. My family will always be grateful to Ronnie for her guidance. Oh, sorry. For her guidance when our daughter, Sarah, was an exchange student in Australia, and in bringing together our Serbian daughter to us, Angela. I'm truly humbled to speak today to honor Ronnie and to celebrate her life. Indeed, we should be celebrating. Her life was worth celebrating, and it's exactly what she would have wanted us to do today. We should rejoice. Why? Because we all had the privilege of knowing Ronnie Newman. We all felt the love that Ronnie felt for each of us. We all have great memories of friendship and fellowship because of Ronnie. We were all able to call her our friend. In a world where there were far too many strangers, Ronnie was a friend. And it was easy for Ronnie to be a friend. She did it so effortlessly. She was genuinely cared about human beings. That was her superpower. Ronnie was a visionary. She came from humble beginnings. From the time that she was a child growing up in Fall River, Massachusetts in the 1940s and 50s, Ronnie had big dreams. She wanted to travel the world, and she wanted to make the world a better place for everyone. Well, I would say that she accomplished both goals. She traveled extensively throughout her life and made friends wherever she went. She also brought people from different cultures together, fostering friendship and understanding between them. This certainly made the world a better place. Ronnie loved Paris. Ronnie loved her Swiss sister, who she met during an exchange program in the early 1960s. Can you imagine the courage and confidence that it took for this young woman to travel to Europe back then? Just getting on an airplane was a big deal in those days. Hardly anyone had ever heard of exchange programs. In fact, student exchange programs only came into being at the end of World War II, at about the time that Ronnie was born. Ronnie realized that this was a great way to foster positive interactions and understanding between different nations. She knew that this was how she could make a difference in the world. Ronnie worked tirelessly for decades to coordinate, promote, and care for exchange students. She was vital to and an enthusiastic supporter of student exchange programs, and they were successful because of her. There are hundreds of former exchange students who will forever be grateful to Ronnie Newman for her help and guidance. They all remember her energy and her kindness. Who was Ronnie Newman? Ronnie Newman was the best part of each of us. She was the goodness and kindness in each of us. Ronnie was an eternal optimist. She was one of the most positive people that I have ever met. There was no problem she could not solve. There was no exchange student she could not place. She was pragmatic, innovative, and creative. Most importantly, she had hope. Ronnie was the light. She burned brightly, and it lit a spark in everyone that she touched. She exuded genuine warmth and caring about her fellow human beings. She was a gift to each of us. She showed us how to treat each other by example. She was one of the most decent people that I have ever met. It is now our turn to fully ignite those sparks and to carry on her legacy. We should all aspire to be like Ronnie Newman. She delighted in meeting new people and learning about new cultures. Her work with exchange programs enriched the lives of hundreds of students and thousands of people with whom they interacted. She imagined a world where people would celebrate cultural differences. She envisioned a kinder, more peaceful world. The world needs more people like Ronnie Newman. And so, to Ronnie, I say, L'chaim.
We've had three different perspectives on who Ronnie was. We're now coming up to a fourth. I'd like to bring to the podium Rabbi Andrew Klein. I really know your name. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. When I came to Barrington in 2007 to become the rabbi at Temple Habonim, I met Barry and I met Ronnie at someone's house. And one of the first things Barry said to me was, I really want my new rabbi to play softball. Will you play softball with us this summer? And I said, no. And then he said, I really want my new rabbi to play the guitar and sing. Do you play the guitar and sing? No. And Barry and Ronnie decided they liked me anyway. And over 13 years, we had a really wonderful relationship. And I want to just reflect on some of the things that I knew about Ronnie. First of all, Ronnie had immense curiosity. Ronnie wanted to explore and know about things and research things and learn about things. She was really curious and asked questions a lot. And if the question didn't have an answer, that was okay. She really wanted to pursue questions. As you know, she had a love of travel and adventure. At some point, I don't know, maybe a dozen years ago, the Congregational Church down the road and Temple Habonim went on an interfaith trip to Israel. And of course, Ronnie was part of that. And all the people from our congregation who had been to Israel many times got to see it through a totally different lens because we studied all the Christian roots there as well. And one of the things that everybody still remembers from that trip, I don't know what to call them, but Ronnie liked to wear these shoes that were like little ballet slippers. Okay, you know what they're, okay. And she wore and you know, we were schlepping through the desert and people said, Ronnie, really, like, you need some shoes. No, these are fine. These are fine. Within a few days, she was saying, where can I buy some sneakers? And we joke about her shoes. I mean, Ronnie would travel like that and not really care if she was prepared or not, because she knew that she could get whatever she needed along the way. I also want to remember very sweetly how very strong-willed and opinionated Ronnie was. If Ronnie had an opinion, she did not hold it in. And if she wanted something to be a certain way, she had no trouble expressing that. And she was also flexible enough to be able to see things from a different point of view as well. Ronnie and Barry both were very independent people. And as much as you two were independent from each other and totally able to live and thrive on your own when she was off traveling, when you were off doing something, you were equally able to be together in love and in harmony. And that sort of independence in a couple is really rare. It's something that I admire so much about the two of you, and I had no trouble saying that very often. Another very sweet memory I have of both you and Ronnie is driving around in these station wagons that were blown up like a bubble and had wood paneling on the sides and reminded me of the kind of car my father drove when I was a kid. But in the 2000s, you were still driving them. And honestly, this is the truth. I've never been here before. I was using my GPS to get here. I was a half a block away. And Siri told me it's right ahead on the left. And I saw one of those station wagons. And I thought maybe Barry's late and he's just pulling in. I saw one of those station wagons and I knew I was in the right place at the right time. You all know about the foreign exchange students that Ronnie brought and hosted and worked so diligently to have them feel at home. One year, maybe 10 years ago, she brought a young man named Lars, who was Jewish. And Lars had grown up in the Ukraine, and his family had moved to Germany because they wanted a freer, better Jewish life. And at Temple Habonim, we have this custom. Is the family that hosted Lars here today?
No.
At Temple Habonim, we have this custom.
We are on Zoom right now.
Hello, it's good to see you again.
Funny, that's the only person not muted for some. Oh no, you're muted. Oh, okay.
Ronnie would love this mute unmute business going on, right? She would find that so funny. We had this custom at Temple Habonim where on Yom Kippur, one or two or three people would get up and tell their Jewish journeys, talk about various aspects of their lives. And that year, Lars told us about what it was growing up, what it was like growing up in Ukraine and what it was like in Germany. And Germany was really trying to make reparations and bring Jewish people in. And he said his whole time in Germany, he never saw a mezuzah on a doorpost, and he never saw someone walking with a kippah down the street. But he learned a whole different way of life in every aspect about his time here in America, but about Jewish life as well. And he really wanted to return to Germany, and he wanted to live there. And he kept saying he wanted to live an open Jewish life in Germany, like he learned here. And that's just one of so many aspects of what Ronnie was able to accomplish with all that she did for these students. And I imagine Lars is alive and well and doing great things in Germany. I think in closing, one of the things that I'd like to say is that Ronnie was really, really sweet. She had this exterior, like I'm going to be tough. And she didn't want to really let that sweet ooze out. And you didn't have to be with her very long for it to just bubble out anyway. Ronnie was really, really sweet and so concerned about other people. And the way that she expressed that was very unique. Ronnie is one in a million and somebody I will never forget, and somebody I'm very honored to have gotten to know her along with you. I'm pretty honored to have known you and to continue knowing you as well, Barry. So thank you for inviting me to speak today.
Thank you, Rabbi. In 1967, Ronnie went to Switzerland on an exchange program. There she met Lisa Hillman, who became a lifetime friend. Lisa couldn't be here today, but she wrote a testimonial, which I would like to ask Holly Oram to come up and recite for you. It just reflects the long-standing friendship that the two of them had. In fact, as couples, the two of us had, her and her husband Dick, and me and Ronnie. So, Holly, please. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Hi there. Can you hear me? No? Matt, can you hear me? Oh, wait. Now you can hear me.
No?
No? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Hi there, I'm Holly. And first, Barry, thank you for asking me to do this. I'm very honored. So this is a loving testimonial to my friend Ronnie Newman by Lisa Hillman. How do you come to understand how the life of one person can affect another? Maybe it's only at times like these when we are forced to pause and think about all the ways someone like a Ronnie Newman changed the lives of so many families and friends. Or maybe it's how we met. This blonde-headed girl with the funny New England accent fell in step with me almost from the outset. The sight of our first meeting foreshadowed Ronnie's life. We met at an airport. It was in Hartford, Connecticut, as we boarded a huge jumbo jet for our first flight to Europe. Ronnie and I were among a select group of Americans accepted into the summer program with the Experiment in International Living, based in Putney, Vermont. It was my first trip to Europe, and Ronnie's too, I think. Thrown together with similar backgrounds, both of us Jewish, we became instant pals. But it wasn't until our first week of orientation in a faraway Swiss chalet where that bond got tested and secured. We were on a training hike with the American group, one of many to prepare us for our 6 weeks living with our individual Swiss families, when we had to climb out of a steep and narrow mountain canyon. The path was rocky and challenging. Hiking just ahead of Ronnie, as my 57 years of memories recalls that moment, I heard her call, "Lisa, help." It wasn't a plaintive cry, but rather a soft request, lest others think her unfit for the challenge. All it took for me to extend an outstretched hand and pull her up those last few rocks. Neither one of us ever forgot that moment, something we laughed about all our lives. Once back in the U.S., my senior year of college was extra busy with plans for my wedding that following summer. When Ronnie married Barry, Dick and I drove to Fall River for the ceremony and reception, and drove home that same Sunday night. Monday morning, work called, but I had to be at that marriage ceremony. Ronnie and Barry visit us in Annapolis many times. Often a tow-headed Andrew was with them, close in age to our daughter Heidi. As Ronnie became more and more engaged with placing foreign students with American families, she repeatedly urged me to consider taking one, and I repeatedly declined. But she finally got me. In 2004, our son Jacob was a sophomore in high school, 15 years after both Andrew and Heidi had long moved on into their adult lives. With an adolescent son alone at home,
It was the right moment to give him a brother. Thanks to Ronnie and her uncanny talent in matching families with the right student, Martin Eller entered our lives. From Frankfurt, Germany, he was just the right age, seniority, intelligence, and worldliness to befriend our son. The following summer, Jacob visited Martin in Germany, and a few years later, Dick and I hiked around Mont Blanc with Martin's parents, Siggy and Gertrude. A friendship began that thrives today. For people living continents apart, our lives have dramatically stayed close. Last October, we visited the family in Frankfurt again. Once more, Ronnie's influence shaped that last trip. After some 50-some years of missing my Swiss sister, the girl I'd lived with in a small Swiss village, I had lost contact with her. Because Ronnie was Ronnie and never lost track of anyone, she was able to reconnect us. Thanks to Ronnie, Dick and I visited Daisy in Geneva and rekindled the closeness and affection we'd felt decades ago. She just had that knack, my friend Ronnie, of bringing people together, bridging worlds, enriching lives, spreading love. How very different my life would have been had our hands not clasped along that steep mountain path. I may have pulled her up then, but she has been pulling me up ever since.
Our story began on a blind date in 1969. For those of you who are a certain age, a blind date's like an app on your cell phone. Except it was before cell phones and before apps. It was back in the dark ages, when we communicated by voice and not by text. We went to a small restaurant in Harvard Square, and both of us distinctly remember 3 subjects we talked about. One was our independence. At the time, neither of us felt the need to have a boyfriend or girlfriend or a soulmate. The second was our love of travel, hers for international and me for domestic. And the third was our love for dogs, particularly basset hounds. Little did we know how prophetic that first date's conversation would be in the establishment of our 54-year relationship. Throughout our married life, we both maintained our individuality with love and support for each other, the ability to know when and how to compromise, and to try to navigate all of life's challenges with a sense of humor. Ronnie fulfilled her love of international travel by visiting Europe and Asia 42 times, and I traveled extensively for work and now in retirement. And we shared our lives along the way with 12 basset hounds who enriched our lives beyond measure. After we got married, we moved to an apartment complex in Burlington, Massachusetts that did not allow pets. We were only planning to live there for a year, and being young and stupid, we decided one Sunday afternoon to buy a puppy. His name was Willie, and although his story does not have a happy ending, he paved the way for the other 11 basset hounds who shared their lives with us. Willie had distemper and died at the age of 4 months. If there's a silver lining to his legacy, it's that we purchased him with a 1-year warranty. For those of you here this afternoon who knew us at various stages of our lives, here's a timeline of our hounds for you to determine when you first met us. After Willie in the 1970s, we had Lance, Emmy, and Lightning. In the 1980s, we had Brutus and Tiffany. From the middle of the 1980s to 2010, we had Simon, Jane, and Sam. And up until the end of last year, we had Will, Gracie, and Harley. In addition to the hounds, one of the other identifying characteristics of our marriage was our choice of automobiles. For 27 years, we drove Chevrolet Caprice Classic station wagons. They were safe, they were comfortable, they could transport 7 or more exchange students at a time, parts were readily available, and we had great mechanics. Thank you, Kenny and Wendy. The Basset Hounds and station wagons became so recognizable in our relationship that during the years we were together, I'm sure that whenever you saw one or the other, you thought of Ronnie and me. In 1967, Ronnie applied to be part of a 6-week exchange program through the Experiment in International Living, an elite organization that has been sponsoring intercultural trips for over 90 years. Ronnie was accepted and spent her time in Switzerland with the Kronbull family, mother, father, son, and 2 daughters. One of the daughters, Therese, and Ronnie became forever friends, and Ronnie always called her her Swiss sister. In 1972, Ronnie and I visited the Kronbull family for a few days, and I saw firsthand what Ronnie always told her exchange students. It's not the house, it's the people in the house that's more important. Little anecdote. I remember returning to the house one day after sightseeing, and Mrs. Kronbull, or Mother, as Ronnie liked to call her, who knew very little English, shouted something from the other room, which you would have expected a 2 or 3-year-old to shout. She shouted, "I make pee." That night for dessert, she served the most delicious apple pie I've ever tasted. Some of the highlights of Ronnie's international travels, of which I was a part, were a VIP reception hosted by the entire town of Heppenheim, Germany, a visit to the office of the editor of one of Germany's daily newspapers, whose office was right next to, overlooking the Berlin Wall. I remember him pointing to it and telling us, "That will never come down." 4 years later, it did. Ronnie always told her students that she wanted to dance at their weddings, and we did, in Spain, Italy, and Germany. International relations became such an important part of her life, Ronnie felt compelled to share it and encourage it with everyone she met. Her mantra was try to change the world one person at a time for the better. And as altruistic as that may seem, I think she did pretty well. Political considerations notwithstanding, I would argue that she generally tried harder to promote international goodwill than any of the self-serving diplomats of the United Nations. Ronnie loved connecting people. Many of the relationships in this room would never have happened without her. Here's a fun fact. I wouldn't know 80% of you here today, and probably 100% of the people who are live streaming now, if it weren't for Ronnie. For her, it didn't matter what your cultural, religious, financial, or social background was. She would be determined to find some common ground to establish a relationship, and she was outstanding doing it. It served her well in her everyday life, and it was especially helpful when she was placing exchange students. Ronnie's people connecting skills were never so evident as when the student applications arrived for the upcoming school year. Ronnie would pick up a 30-page application and transform herself into Charlie Babbitt, the savant character played by Dustin Hoffman in The Rain Man. In 5 minutes, she knew the student's GPI, English score, personal interests. She read and analyzed the essay. She knew the parents' names, ages, occupations, the siblings' names and ages. She looked at the pictures and read the references. All the while, she was computing the viability of a student's success in a particular school system with a particular family. Her talent for picking the right student for the right family in the right school was astounding. And she was ever so conscious that she was trusted with and by so many special people to make her placements successful. Special, the students who decided to leave the comfort zones of their family and friends for the school year. Special, the parents who basically on blind faith trusted their child to an organization that would send him or her to a foreign country to live with a family they have, in most cases, never met. And third, the special families here in the United States who open their homes and disrupt their family dynamics by sharing their lives with a stranger, a teenager no less. Ronnie recognized these special people, many of whom are here today, and even more who are live streaming around the world, and matched them with an incredible level of expertise. Of course, it didn't hurt that each placement came with a Ronnie Newman guarantee of 24/7 support. For those of you who are wondering whether I will address the elephant in the room, I will not disappoint you. The answer is yes. We can't accurately profile the person whose life we are celebrating here today without mentioning she was never on time. Let's start by saying she was chronically late for doctor's appointments, meetings, work, and volunteer assignments. She was late for individual lunch dates with several of you, breakfast and luncheon meetings with many of you, her PPAC theater group, museum lectures with Marcia. She missed airline flights, buses, trains, and a boat. Who misses a boat? Ronnie did. We have been late for family events, dinner engagements with friends, weddings and funerals, and the list goes on. She was late with monthly reports, picking up exchange students, dropping off exchange students, conference calls, Zoom meetings before COVID, Zoom meetings during COVID, and Zoom meetings after COVID. Each location in the world has a time zone. Wherever Ronnie was, there were two. Local and Ronnie. Sadly, the only thing she wasn't late for is why we're all here today to celebrate her. Ronnie loved Paris. How many times have we heard that today? She visited at least once a year. A round-trip ticket was my go-to birthday present for her every year. The city was like Shangri-La to her. Her daily life there was elevated to a different dimension. She enjoyed relaxing and people-watching in any of the sidewalk cafes in her neighborhood. She loved to shop and go to museums. For her 70th birthday, she rented an apartment for 2 weeks and lived like a local. She always said that wherever she was on a given day, her mind and her heart were in Paris. During all of her recent trips to Paris, she looked forward to having dinner with a former exchange student, Damien, his wife, Ludovine, their 3 children, and his parents. She always used to rave about how well-behaved the children were and what a great cook Ludovine was. Her last trip to Europe was to see her favorite recording artist, James Taylor, in concert. Ronnie's passion for connecting people was infectious. It's impossible to know how many people she connected or influenced in her professional and social interactions. We know it's well into the hundreds and probably into the thousands. She knew that it just wasn't the exchange students who were having life-transforming experiences. She realized it had a ripple effect, like throwing a rock into water. As Melissa articulated so well, her life with Mike and her parents and their friends have been broadened to include their Italian students, their families, their extended families, and friends. And who knows how many of those people have been affected beyond their connections to others. Ronnie began her journey as a curious teenager, and in the 60 years since, she became a global ambassador. So next time you're with that friend that you never would have met if she hadn't connected you, or you see a basset hound or one of them huge station wagons, or hear a James Taylor song or a reference to Paris, or remember all those times you had to wait for her, I hope you smile and think of Ronnie and her life well lived. Thank you. Before we wrap up the formal part of today's program, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to celebrate Ronnie's life here in person and live streaming around the world. Locally, I would like to thank the One Autonomy Country Club for the use of their facilities, Ron, the chef, for his great food, the wait staff who did a phenomenal job, if they're still here, Jen Chapin, the club representative who made sure that everything we take for granted was in place on time. That includes the room setup, tables, chairs, lights, microphone, electronics, food, etc. Mary Brown, one of Ronnie's lifelong friends, for donating and arranging the flowers, and her husband Richard for helping to transport them. Lighthouse Productions for the videography services. Lisa Hillman for her heartfelt testimonial. And our presenters, Melissa Fogarty, Jeanette Burtness, Holly Oren, Rabbi Klein, and Electra. Special thanks to Electra. First for being my granddaughter, and second for putting together the slide presentation. Our last presentation is a biographic video that was produced by someone who did not want to be recognized, and I will respect his wishes. I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen other videos he's done, and they've been spectacular. I'm sure this one will be just as good, and after it's over, we'll break for coffee and dessert. Two more quick things. By the way, Liz, if you see your husband, thank him for the video. When an event or a project is over, there is usually someone who is recognized as the driving force. Someone who made sure that all of the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. That indispensable person without whom the project would never have been completed, let alone been completed successfully. For me, that person is Judith Rosenthal. Ronnie. As the self-appointed project manager, for her, this was a labor of love. And her singular goal for this event to be successful would be if Ronnie were here, she would say, we did well. Well, Judith, I'm here. You did very well. Thank you very much.
Tech wizard over here. I'm just gonna press some buttons and hope this works. Weird. Verse. Now's the time. Okay.
Ronnie and I are two fiercely independent individuals. Particularly during the first part of our marriage, I was working away 2-3 nights a week. I was in the reserves, so I was gone on weekends. 2 weeks in the summer, I was playing softball in 2 different leagues, and people would come up to Ronnie and ask her, why did you even marry him? And she would say, because he had a great sense of humor. Ronnie, on the other hand, spent an inordinate amount of time with her exchange students. She would visit them once or twice a month. She would go to their sporting events if they were involved with athletics. She would go to concerts and plays if they were involved in theater. And she was involved in volunteering and having lunch with the girls. And people would ask me, why did you ever marry her? And I would say, because I have a great sense of humor. You must have been a beautiful baby. You must have been a wonderful child. When you were only starting to go to kindergarten, I bet you drove the little boy wild. And when it came to winning blue ribbons, you must have shown the other kids how. I can see the judge's eyes as they handed you the prize. I bet you made the cutest bow. Oh, you must have been a beautiful baby. 'Cause baby, look at you now. Does your mother realize the stork delivered quite a prize the day he left you
on the family tree. Does your dad appreciate that you're merely super great? The miracle of any century. If they don't, just send them both to me. You must have been abused.
You made me love you. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. You made me want you, and all the time you knew it. I guess you always knew it. You made me happy sometimes. Sometimes you made me glad. But there were times, dear, you made me feel so bad. You made me sigh. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to tell you. I want some love. That's true. Yes, I do. Indeed, I do. You know I do. Give me what I cry for. You know you got no friend that kisses that I could die for. You know you made me love you. You made me sigh. You're down in trouble, and you need a helping hand. Nothing is going right. Close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there.
Ronnie and I became friends 72 years ago in first grade. Over the years, we shared so much, it's hard to express all that she meant to me. We traveled together extensively over the last 10 years. What a gift to have my own personal tour guide and also be able to meet many of the students and their families she had befriended over the years. Ronnie not only made connections, she kept connections. She was many wonderful things, but one thing she definitely was not was on time, ever. We were traveling to one of the many cities we visited, and I made her promise she would be ready when I got to her home in Barrington. I called the house, and as I was leaving, and Barry answered. Not only was Ronnie not home, but she hadn't finished packing. I arrived at the house. Still, she wasn't there. Eventually, she sauntered in and announced everything would be fine, we'll get there on time, which of course we did. I wasn't aware, however, that Barry can drive 90 miles an hour when required. Ronnie was a true friend, always supportive, always ready for our next adventure. I will miss all that she was and all that she meant to me.
Until we meet again in the City of Lights. Au revoir, my friend. I love you.
Even your darkest night, you just call your mind. And you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you. Every time I look down on this timeless town, whether blue or gray be her skies, whether loud be her cheers or whether soft be her tears, more and more do I realize that I love Paris in the springtime. I love Paris in the fall. I love Paris in the winter when it drizzles. I love Paris in the summer when it sizzles. I love Paris every moment.
She taught me that you can make a better world simply by giving different people the chance to talk each other. She taught me that life is tough, but you may always find a way or a place to have a laugh with someone and to shed a light on your particular period of life. And she taught me that if it rains and you don't have an umbrella with you, it's okay if you get wet, because it's only water. Every time it rains, nowadays, I never have an umbrella with me. I always get wet, and I always think about what Ronnie said that day in New Jersey, I guess. In New Jersey, yes, strange. In New Jersey, with the rain and without an umbrella. Big teaching.